Well, good afternoon. This is the weekly rate update for Thursday, the 24th of July. I hope everyone is doing well. Going to dive right into the numbers. Not a huge amount of economic data this week. Not much in the way of inflationary data. We did get a little bit of reporting on the labor market, and it's a mixed bag. We saw first-time claims drop unexpectedly. So in that respect, the job market is tightening, which is good news economically, but not great news for interest rates. And that's one of the reasons rates are a bit higher today. However, continuing claims, folks that are currently unemployed are having a more difficult time finding a job. So those numbers were likewise higher than expected. In fact, you got to go back to 2021 to find jobless claims as stubbornly high as they are right now. So a mixed bag on that front. Not a whole lot else that's moving the bond market. So I'm just going to give you the numbers according to Mortgage News Daily. It has been a very flat 30-day period with regard to interest rates, y'all. 6.81% today is the national average for a 30-year fixed rate conforming loan, according to Mortgage News Daily. 1 week ago, we were at 6.82, so almost dead flat for the week. We were at 6.82 30 days ago. So really not much movement, y'all. We did see a dip on the 1st of July, 1st of this month, down to 6.67, and that was a multi-month low, but again, within a very tight range. So we just haven't seen a lot moving interest rates, y'all. It's really going to be driven by the Fed and the management at the Fed, and you see the ongoing war between the administration and Fed Chair Powell on the future of interest rate cuts. We'll look quickly at the CME FedWatch tool. That has a 62% chance of a cut at the September meeting. There's only a 2% chance of a cut at the meeting at the end of this month, so that's not going to happen this month. If it did, it would be a surprise to the marketplace, and we would see probably a pretty abrupt rally in the bond market that could help us significantly if they were to surprise us with an off-cycle or an unexpected cut. Y'all, I want to talk about buy downs for a minute because we see a lot of folks looking for ways to stand out in the marketplace. And I know that there are a number of folks that are, you own a house in a neighborhood where maybe they're still building new homes by maybe even the same builder of the house that you're occupying. And it's got the net effect of having to compete with a brand new home that's offering serious concessions on the mortgage side. Builders are able to do this because they have co-ownership with the mortgage companies that represent them, and they're able to cross-pollinate the revenue. That's a long-winded way of saying it's built into the sales price of your house, any mortgage concessions that are there. That said, they're real concessions. And it can be very challenging to compete on the outside, but there are some things that we can do, and you see a number of folks doing them. And again, from a marketing standpoint, there may be very good utility in advertising a 2-1 buy down or a 1-1 buy down on a mortgage. And what that is, y'all, is you take the current market rate, and I'm just going to make the math easy by saying it's 7%. Well, a 2-1 buy down would buy down that interest rate to 5% for the first year. It would go to 6% for the second year, and it would be what we would call the fully indexed rate, or that 7% the third year, and ongoing for the remainder of the term. The thing that most folks are not aware of on a buy down, though, is the cost associated with it. On a temporary buy down, y'all, the cost is exactly the savings. So let's just looking at those numbers. If you finance $400,000 at 7%, you're going to have a $2,661 monthly payment on that house, principal and interest. You buy it down to 5%, that payment goes down $513 a month. You multiply that times 12, it's $6,160 in interest savings in that first year. Well, y'all, the buy down for that first year cost exactly $6,160. The second year comes down a point to 6%. That saves you $263 a month. Again, multiply that times 12 months. That's $3,100 and change that interest savings gives you in that second year. The cost again is $3,155 for that second year. This is all paid at closing, so it's paid up front by either the buyer or the seller, or a combination of the two. Generally, when these are being offered, they're offered by the seller as a concession, because it wouldn't make sense for the buyer to pay for something in advance that is only saving them over time the exact amount of money. This is a long-winded way of saying that temporary buy downs, 2-1 buy downs, 3-1 buy downs, the cost of those buy downs is exactly the same as the savings on those buy downs. That is significantly different, y'all, than what you would see on a permanent buy down. This, if you just look at a 2-1 buy down, 2 1/3 points, roughly what those are going to cost. Those points being percentages of your loan amount. The total cost here of a 2-1 buy down on a $400,000 mortgage, you're looking at upwards of $9,300 that the seller's paying for you at closing if they're willing. What I like to do is propose not only that as an option, because we certainly do them and we're happy to offer those to a buyer if they're able to swing in. But let's look at what that 2.3 points would give you on a permanent buy down. You can assume that every point that you pay might improve your rate 1/4 to 3/8 or so in rate. So it's not inconceivable that you could buy your rate down 5/8 of a point, even 3/4 of a point with that same amount of money. And that's a permanent situation. So if you can get that rate, from maybe 6 3/4 down to 6 or maybe even in the 5/9s, well, then you're saving for 30 years. And that savings is dramatically higher than it would be for just that first 2-year period. So I like to give borrowers the option. I will tell you 99 times out of 100, the borrower far prefers a permanent buy down. Even though that first year or two may be a little bit higher, the savings overall, the savings over the next 5, 7, 10 years is so dramatic, it's worth way more than just buying a temporary buy down that saves exactly what it costs and vice versa. So anyway, I like to show these options to folks. We have all the tools. I use all the tools to break these out and show them side by side. And once folks see the savings over time, they almost always choose the permanent buy down option, right? It might not even be as expensive at closing. Have the seller pay it. They don't care whether it's going to a permanent buy down or a temporary buy down. If they're willing to pay for one, they're certainly willing to pay for the other. And then you get permanent savings on that loan. And if you are able to buy it down, let's just take as an example, you buy it down into the high 5s. Well, how long might it be before that's worthwhile refinancing? In other words, you might put it in a position to where it may be 5, 10 years before we see interest rates sufficiently low for that to be a refinanceable mortgage. So you've essentially kind of safeguarded yourself against the future cost of a refi if you can do a decent buy down on that rate. Now, that being said, the amount that buy down buys you daily varies. It varies based on market conditions, right? A point will buy you significantly differently depending on what direction rates are moving. So call me and I'm happy to run those numbers for you so that we can look at where we are today and figure out what your best options might be. In any event, I hope this is helpful. Just wanted to kind of touch on something that I've kind of alluded to over the last few videos and give you some hard numbers to kind of chew on with that. And again, that's a service that we provide, y'all, is just breaking down the numbers, making it understandable with the goal of helping people afford this home comfortably. That's ultimately what we're trying to get to, y'all. Put them on the best financial footing going forward. In any event, I hope this is helpful for you and for your clients. Feel free to reach out to all the numbers on my screen. Always honored to have your referrals, always blessed to have them. Stay blessed, stay safe. We will talk to you next week.